So hi everyone and welcome to today's webinar, which is Formulating Cosmetics, and we're looking at aerosols in particular. So just to let you know, this webinar is being recorded and we'll be sending out the recording to everyone who is registered afterwards. There's also going to be the opportunity for some questions at the end. So if you've got any questions as we go through, please feel free to put them in the Q&A box, and myself and Maycon will do our best to answer those towards the end. And also feel very free to use the chat option if you want to share any experiences or kind of talk to other people that are attending today. Feel very welcome to. We want to keep this a really nice interactive experience. So I'm joined by Maycon today from MW Innovations, who is a huge expert in formulating cosmetics and actually has an incredible background, particularly with aerosols, which I'm sure he will talk to you about in more detail. So I'm very happy to be joined with him. Just to go through our agenda, we'll be looking at the aerosol market and looking at some reasons why you might want to consider using aerosols as a kind of packaging for your cosmetics. So in terms of that, we'll be looking at the history and also the advances in technology that have happened for aerosols and kind of where we are right now in the world as well. And Macon's got some really good information about choosing the right packaging, so the right aerosols for your brand and for your products and your formulations. And then I'll be looking at consumer research for aerosols, so more looking at the formulation and the efficacy and consumer acceptance of those formulations. And I've got a case study that I'm going to take you through to give you some ideas of how we might get consumers to assess aerosol products. So firstly, I'll introduce myself. So I'm the Regulatory Director at Ayton Global Research. So I focus on regulations that are to do with cosmetics, so anything that might affect claim substantiation in particular, but also looking at advertising regulations, because obviously a lot of our research that we provide for our clients gets put into adverts. So we want to make sure all of our data is globally compliant and that it can be used. So Maycon, I'd love for you to introduce yourself, please.
Oh, good morning, everybody. Good afternoon. Carys, again, thank you very much for this opportunity. I appreciate a lot to this opportunity to talk it with you and my friends. I think it is a good opportunity to share my knowledge and so you helped a lot and other people's improve the business. Okay, just to talk about me, I have around 23 years of experience in professional, and these I have the opportunity to work in a long time in a Johnson Johnson, around 16 years. After Johnson Johnson, I moved for Bayersdorf in Latin America, and around 5 years ago, I had the opportunity to create MW Innovations. Can you hear me, Carys?
Yeah, I'm just going to, sorry, I do apologize for interruption. I'm going to change my Wi-Fi because I think I'm losing a bit.
I changed mine here too. Don't worry.
2 seconds, everyone. Sorry for the technical hiccup, but hopefully I can change this to my phone.
Have big issues for us. It's amazing.
Right, that
Well,
should be a bit more stable now.
Can we?
Yeah, is that more stable? I think we might have had it more stable. Right, sorry for the interruption, everyone. I think I've got more stable connection now. So if we continue, sorry, mate.
No, don't worry. Around 5 years ago, I had the opportunity to create MW Innovations. Our focus more in money innovation. This is objectively our company. And today you stand this background for analytical process. Again, thank you for very much again for this opportunity, because the aerosol, it's an amazing topic for me. I love to work in a aerosol. Around 12 years ago, I had the opportunity to start this technology in Johnson Johnson when you discover a new life. And at this point, I think my objective to share here my passion for aerosol, but this technology is not easy to work in. If you look at today, you have a lot of options, the technology, a lot of products. However, when you back for a workbench, for develop, for study, you need to have a lot of connection with the supply, manufacturer, how material. It's amazing because it's not easy to work it, but in the end, when you have a success, it's amazing when you have a final results. I think this my objective today, feeling this almost experiencing behind the aerosol technology.
Amazing. I think you've got some amazing information. I can't wait for you to share it with everyone, because as I said, Maycon has got so much experience in this particular industry. So just to give us an introduction, and we'll go into a bit more depth into the market, but just to give some overall analysis, I kind of wanted to share some excerpts from news articles I've seen that really kind of show why we wanted to do aerosols and why it's such an important kind of packaging to think about, and especially in this day and age. So generally there is a higher increase in disposable income, and that's the case worldwide. It's happening. So people are spending more on cosmetics, and this increases things that are come in aerosols. So things like dry shampoos, hairsprays, shaving creams, deodorants, all of these personal care products have very historically come into aerosols as well. So there's a huge demand for it because as a higher disposable income comes up, everyone feels a bit more aware of their personal hygiene. So yeah, it's a huge driver. And generally, innovation within cosmetics and personal care is seeing a huge increase in aerosols as well. But also I wanted to bring up that it's kind of seen as a really positive green sort of packaging as well, which I think is quite surprising when you look back at the old sort of 80s aerosols. I know there was a huge issue with kind of the environment. And now it's actually seen as quite a recyclable packaging. It's getting rid of more plastics, and it's got a high recyclable rate. So again, Maycon's going to go into that in a bit more detail, and being able to transfer it has got less of a carbon footprint as well. So it's funny that it's actually being seen as this really sustainable packaging now. So we need to kind of look into that and be able to drive it, because obviously anything we can do to make sure our packaging is more environmentally friendly, the better it is for everyone. So over to you, Maycon.
Yeah, this is an amazing topic because when you talk about is aerosol, the first technology we had the opportunity to saw in the history around in 1924 is the first discovered technology. But in the Second World, you have a lot success to use this, especially for American armies when you use it for dispersion the insect repellent. Okay, okay, okay.
Oh, sorry, I just tried to
This is
control, but it's not letting me. So
okay. Thank you. Thank you. This is interesting because when you look at these histories, it's the first opportunity using a massive technology for help this consumer. This is, I think, behind the key message when you talk aerosol. This is a technology very flexible to use. You have opportunity to using. No, doesn't give me there.
oh, sorry, it's
Just
on
enter.
me. I have to ask me,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
don't worry. This is interesting. When you look in today, after 100 years ago, after 1 years, 100 years, today you have the opportunity to look at a lot of application this technology. Industrial clothing, including sexy, automotive, and paints medicine. This is very flexible technology. Why? Because if it's possible to give you a new sensorial, give you new flexible use for consumer, about transportation. Today, this technology have it in a lot of pointers. Just think, just enter, please. Uh, oops. When you talk a little more about the cosmetic, of course, a long time you use this technology in cosmetic, but in 2004, you look at this movementation or just new tendency for a sunscreen products. Why? Because sometimes the sunscreen product, the consumer doesn't like the apply in the skin, have issues about the sensor, and with this technology, the companies saw the opportunity to bring a new sensation, more flexible application, and starting another new technology when you talk about aerosol. This technology bag involved when you have a pressure, but it doesn't use sometimes a propellant. This evolution, it's amazing. When you talk a long time ago, today you have a different package, formatting, actuator. Now you talk a little more about this flexible technology for our consumers. Just enter, please. Yeah. This is point, when you look into this global, just a small review, a globally aerosol production, you have the opportunity to look here, this technology increased a lot in 10 years. And today you have a tendency increasing more. Today you have a lot of discussion about COVID, this dispersion, small particle. This is when you talk about the particle, you talk about the small aerosol. And this is techno, in my feeling, have a big tendency. Right? And when you look in a Brazil special, look at the evaluation in after 10 years. This is amazing technology. Just enter, please. Yeah, just when you talk a little more about Europe, of course, the 2000 and 2 years ago has a little decrease in this business, but when you look at it, especially for personal care, around 57% of the Eurozone Europe have a dedication for a personal care cosmetic. Hairstyle, desodorantes, sunscreen, body mist, sun Example, the sun it's very interesting to use it because sometimes use a hydroxyacetone. This ingredient is very unstable. It's a temperature, the light, and the oxygen. When you put in an aerosol, if you possible to protection the product. Example, the retinol 2, the vitamin C. Of course, this is an expensive ingredient, but if you possible bring for consumer small packaging. This technology is very flexible to use it and safe for product. And just enter in a curious information about the volume in the Europe. I have a control not.
No, sorry, it's just me. You'll
I
have
have a
to
control
keep
the
saying
presentation.
that.
Okay, that works. Okay, just interesting information when you talk, when you look at the volume, the packaging, and behind these have a very interesting opportunity for recyclation the tube. Of course, I don't talk here about the necessity to clean the packaging, but you have a big volume. Just look at Europe. It's a very interesting opportunity for business here. And when you talk about more Brazilian, just enter, please. You have the same tendency when you compare the Europe, when the personal care have more volume here. And of course, today the consumer is a common using in adult care products. But the interesting number because you have a very close number when you compare the Europe. And especially for Brazil, this technology increased a lot and have the same tendency the another countries. Example, Argentina's people using It's part of the Argentina's people aerosol product. The Argentinians love this technology, using in food, in using a lot of technology and application. The next, please. Just enter, please. When you started the process, the R&D, when you talk, oh, I would like to develop the new aerosol technology. I have just back, please. Here have 5 points most important you have in your mind. First, of course, look at the competitor, the packaging, the application, the spark pattern, the sensorial. Other point, regulatory. Today, all the countries have a special regulatory when you talk about the aerosol. In the next slide, you talk about all countries have a special. Oops, can you read me? I'm back here. Today, sorry about today, the internet. Today is very
Sorry,
slow.
it's my side as well. It's not usually the case, but we'll be fine. We'll
No,
get through it.
okay. Sorry, people. This is an interesting point, and every time when you work in a regulatory, you have this point. You need to look every time when you talk about regulatory because you have a mandatory labeling, particle size, when you have dedication for kids product, consumer. This is very interesting point here. With the aerosol, if it's possible to bring it for consumer, new sensation. Okay. This is a key point when you work in aerosol technology. You need to connection. You need to talk. You need, of course, to learn a lot. But if you working alone, certainly you do not have a success in the end of your product. In this case, my suggestion for you every time to work together very, very close with the packaging team, pack supply, and manufacturer. Because when you talk an aerosol technologist, enter please, it's not, it's a very complex technology because it's normally when you work in a cosmetic, just you have a formulation, the bouquet and the packaging. But when you talk in aerosol, you need to attention all of the piece you have in the packaging. The tube, because normally, yeah, depends the propellants, depend the book, you have interaction about tube, the valve, but if you possible have the steel or clogging. Oops, just stand my here my screen. Oops. Uh, just here. Uh, this is interesting. When you have enough aerosol, you have a new word. Sometimes people tell me, oh, but my product doesn't have issue about the stability. But my product is very stable. But when you talk about aerosol and they have a propellant, they have a big interaction. You talk about the chemistry, you talk about the pressure, you talk about the air. This is sometimes have a big issues. Just enter, please. I think these issues in all category. Today you have two options, the packaging. A lot of options, the pactions. Depends the application. If you possible, use the glass, the back, but it's more common to use in aluminum flammers. Aluminum for cosmetic premium products. And the flammers, example for a hair spray, it's a product you need to bring is a cheaper product. It's a no sensation, flexible application, but you need the low cost. This is interesting when you have example traditional or monoblock aerosol, it's aluminum. On just one piece, you create all tube. In but in flamers, you have a montation, different pieces, different parts. You need to put the soldering, this packaging. Example, it's a painting product insecticide. It's common to use the flamers. But if you need the more pressure, of course, you need to work in a monoblock piece. Just enter, please. But sometimes people talk about cost. The flamers, of course, it's cheaper when you compare the PET or the glass or the aluminum package, but you need to attention about leaky. You have a very potential about the corrosion and the rusted potential infection too. Next, please. The propellant. The propellant, it's very interesting because today we have a lot of options in the packaging or opportunity today. My suggestion here, before to starting to work, and you need to check this. First, the supply in your country, because normally you have a special combination. Example, the butane is butane propane in Europe. The United States, you have only BP, and Brazil have a mixing. This purity, the propellant, will be influencing a lot in your final performance of the product, about the interaction you're involving, clothing, corrosion. I think I have a discussion or one question here about the benzene. This is interesting propellant because it's flexible to work, but my suggestion here, you need to check the interaction about your product. You need to look at the pressure internally, because depends the propellant will be different internally pressure in your packing. Okay, and of course, you had this point about stability, the long life stability of the product too. The next, please. Another part, the aerosol, and amazing part, it's a actuator in the cup. The cup, you need more attention about corrosion because you have internal gasket. Sometimes when you have a bad smell in your product, please check the gasket. The gasket, this is a part in behind the cup. You help to close, solve a problem or future issues about the leak, the product. But if you have a problem about the bad smell, of course, first check the smell your propellant. The second, propellant interaction, a book. But 99% you have this interaction a gasket. My suggestion here, every time when you give the brief for a packaging, you need to give all the information for a supply packaging, because the supply packaging have a lot of experience behind this. In another piece, and very amazing piece, when you talk about actuator. Today you have a lot of option, the actuator. The actuator have a directly influence in the performance product, sensorial, the spray format, the particle size. And the next, please, slide. And one part very interesting in the actuator, this is spray noising. Sometimes the R&D people forgot this part. This is very amazing part. Depends this piece have a different design, star or lines. this design will be influenced directly in your final performance display. Of course, the supply pack have a lot of experience, but you have a responsibility for a final product. Check this. Example, if you have an aerosol product with big spray area, this is an issue for consumer because the consumer will have a sensation on the product, the skin, because the propellant bring the cool sensation in the skin, but the product, you do not have a good covering in the skin. And then normally the consumers use the format to have a burning in the skin. But today you have, I love this technology because every day you have opportunity to look at the new technology. And today you have this option, the cap. When you change the position, you change the spray. In 10 years ago, you needed to change this nozzle. Today, if you possible having the same package, two different spray format, it's amazing. Of course, you have in the end, you have a final part costing. I would like to see the kind of product use each kind of nose piercing. I love the commentaries. Good. But when you started the product about an aerosol, you needed to look at the final consumer. Exactly the technology I need you to bring this consumer. Today, in the left, you have a traditional aerosol, normally to use a high concentration the propellant. When do you compare the cost of the propellant versus book? Of course, the propellant is cheaper, the book, but you need to check this interaction about the book and the propellant. Behind the left, you have a very small piece, it's a cheaper piece. When you have internally a glass tube, external acrylic, when you, if possible, to simulation interaction, the propellant and the book internally in your package. I recommend if you work to aerosol, you need to have this piece in the lab. If it's possible to look at the directly and influence and the potential instability, crystallization the book. If you have a crystallization the book or compactation the book in the case in the aerosol, of course, in the end the product you have a clogging. But in parallel, today have this a bag and valving technology. Interesting technology, very flexible. If you possible, applying all angle because it's do not have a internally propellant. You have this bag. Outside, you put in a pressure, in normal air. In the end, when you crave in the packaging, you have a internally pressure. Sure, it's an expensive packaging when you compare the traditional aerosol. The next, please. Another point, and this topic is very common for aerosol life. 10 years ago, it doesn't have a special or dedication communication or legislation, special legislation about this inhalation aerosol. And today all countries have this, especially to Brazil have in 2017, the Anvisa send a new requirement. The next, please. The Anvisa, special for Brazil, enter please, Carol. Don't worry. What's that?
Does it come through?
No. Okay. This okay, don't worry. This is special legislation in Brazil when you have a strictly direction when you work in aerosol, but dedication bag on valve and aerosol for kids. This is very interesting because it's a prohibitive to use a traditional aerosol. What it means traditional aerosol? Has a propellant. It's a common in another countries. In my recommendation here, when you have a dedication product for kids, stop, talk to your regulatory, check your internally requirement in your country for launching this point, because you have a special labeling recommendation, you have a special particle size, you have a special point when you talk about kids products. The next, please. Next.
Oh. Was there anything else you needed to add then? It's over to me.
Yeah.
Perfect. Oh, thank you so much, Maycon. It's such interesting information. As I said, I knew that Maycon was going to have a lot of great experience to deliver there. So now I really want to talk about how the consumers then analyze the aerosol products. So once you decided your packaging and you're going ahead with your formulation, you really want to get that feedback from your consumers to make sure that that formulation in that delivery system is giving them the effects and the benefits that they really want to achieve. As well as that, if there's any claims you want to make about the formulation as well, we need to make sure there's some evidence behind it so that you can legally make those claims. So that's what I'm going to talk about, is substantiating claims through consumer research, as well as getting product feedback. So when I talk about consumer research, I'm talking really about the perception of the product, as opposed to a clinical assessment where there might be an instrumental study or a lab test. What we want to replicate is the actual use of the product. So if a consumer was to purchase your product on the shelves or online and took it home and you followed your usage directions, this is exactly what the benefits are. We want them to see is exactly what they would get as they purchase it, essentially. So we usually conduct the studies in home. So as I said, we send the products out to them and they answer online questionnaires. So they're self-assessing instead of having sort of someone assess it for them. We can also do things like comparison as well. So if you want to look at two different delivery systems and maybe look at two different aerosols, you can compare those with the consumer to see what they prefer as a kind of delivery system as well. You might need some additional evidence. So as I mentioned, if there are certain products you have, for example, if it's a sunscreen product, a sun protection product, obviously the consumers can't say what the SPF is in the product. We need to get some kind of clinical testing there. So we always kind of advise the best evidence that you need for your claims. So always feel free to reach out. So as well as claim substantiation, what other kind of reasons would you use consumer research for? So as I said, it should really be seen as something that's part of your product development cycle. As you're thinking about new consumer products and using aerosols, you might want to get some feedback without using a product on, what kind of delivery system people would use through some online surveys. And then you're obviously sending it out and making sure you get that feedback. It basically means you're kind of lowering the risk of putting a product straight on the market because you're getting this feedback throughout the process. It also gives you a chance to get the perceptions of the product, but also the brand. So generally, claim substantiation studies have to be unbranded, but we do often reveal the brand at the end of the kind of efficacy questions to say if the claims are substantiated, to then look at maybe how people perceive the branding it's going to be put into. Do they like the packaging? Do they think the price points are right for the brand? All that kind of information as well. So it's not really just a case of ticking off boxes and saying, I've substantiated my claims, I'm legally compliant. It's making sure that you get the best out of your brand as you possibly can. As well as comparison testing, as I mentioned, it might be to do with the packaging. You can also do things like test against your competitors. That's usually based on the formulation itself, but obviously you can test out the packaging against your competitors. And also reformulation. So if you did have to reformulate your product so it can go into a particular kind of aerosol, we can do a comparison on the old and the new formulation to make sure the volunteers or the consumers are still getting the same experience from using it. You can also investigate new markets, whether that's a country or it's, a new kind of target consumer that you haven't been selling to beforehand. And we also help to gather things like testimonials and reviews, as well as photos and videos. So we're really looking to get the most out of your study. And I always say, think about these things right at the beginning, because there's so many times where people will just do a claim substantiation study, just get those tick boxes done. And then at the end of it go, oh, we could have got testimonials, we could have got photos, we could have got videos, and we could have really used those in our social media campaigns. So yeah, always be aware from the beginning, get the most out of it as you possibly can. Some examples of the types of claims you might see, I've put on the side here. So things like 88% of people agree that the spray provides an even application. People might recommend the product. And I thought this was a really common one that we see because we test a lot of antiperspirants, so deodorants with an aerosol, and making sure that things like marks aren't left on their clothing or their skin tends to be a really popular thing to test for in an antiperspirant spray. So I've got a case study that I want to go through here. And as I mentioned, at this point, we really want to look at the formulation and what the formulation can achieve. So this was for a heat protection spray for a professional hair tool and products brand. So they're kind of launching out after making lots of hair tools. They want to branch out and start selling some other hair styling products as well. So in this case, it was the Heat Protect spray. So as I said, they really want to make sure their consumer perception claims are substantiated, as well as their marketing claims. They really looked at the intended pricing for this product because it's a new venture, as I mentioned. Their previous products, as kind of looking at what we're saying about investigating new markets, it's the same consumer, but where they've always made electrical styling tools, they're now looking at making a cosmetic product. So they really want to make sure their pricing's kind of got a good price point for their consumer there. They also benchmarked against products the customer is currently using. So this isn't a direct comparison to say it's better than every product on the market, because obviously you'd need to do some really in-depth direct comparisons to do that. But it gives them an idea, what are people currently using and would they switch to our product? Just again, to give them that confidence when they go to launch. So what was our panel criteria for this study? So as I mentioned, we always want to reflect your target consumer. So people always ask me, who should I test on? Well, you tell me, who are you selling this product to? Because that's who we're going to reflect. And there's no limit there either. People say, can I recruit people who have this hair condition or this hair problem or anything like that? Of course we can. It's really based on what you need. So for this particular client, we did female volunteers because their target consumer is for females. The 18 to 50 age range, because they don't have a very specific age range, it's kind of available for lots of different people. We also wanted to have a demographic split of the UK hair types. So looking at who is represented in the UK on a demographic, we wanted to make sure that we replicated those hair types as well. So we could make sure that if they launch this product, whoever's going to be purchasing the product is being reflected in the study. And again, the same for hair length. So generally 25% of the population have shorter hair and 75% have medium to long. So that's who we're replicating. They had to use Heat Protect spray already because we wanted to compare against their usual brand, and they had to use a premium heat styling tool. This is really important because, as I mentioned, this is who their consumer is, people that spend a lot of money on heat styling tools and who use them every day, or at least very, very often, so we could get that feedback. So the test conditions, as I said earlier, we want to replicate the actual conditions of the product in use. So it's exactly how they're going to sell the product. So we needed to make sure they used it on both wet and dry hair. We also made sure that the usage directions reflected what would be on the packaging. And obviously, we also had to have safety precautions on there that are in line with the cosmetovigilance obligations, because we need to make sure it's safe for the volunteers as well, and that they can report any undesirable events, which will be registered by the brand when they sell their product. So once we sent out the product and they've used it exactly how we wanted them to, we asked the volunteers, obviously, all the questions based on the claims, and got their feedback to see if they agree or disagree with every claim, essentially. So this is a small excerpt from one of our reports, which is a summary at the end, which basically says, for every single question, who had a positive response, who had a negative response. So on the left, we have the statements. So it's really important that the questions are verbatim to the claim they want to make, so they can lift it out and put it straight into their marketing. So we had things about the product being invisible on the hair, reducing frizz and flyaways, making sure it's suitable for their hair type, because as we know, we had a different split of hair types on that study. And making sure that people would buy it if the price was right to them, because of course that was a really important part of this study. So then you can see that we've got the number of people that were satisfied, the number of people that had a neutral response, and the number of people that were not satisfied, and then the percentage. So what we're really interested in is that percentage of people that were satisfied, because it gives us a pass mark. We know that if at least 2/3 of the population of the study have agreed with the statement, we can legally make that claim. But also, this is what you see in the advertising. So that first claim, as you can see, over 90%, it's a huge agreement. 92% of people agree that this product feels invisible on their hair. It's such a lovely claim to take straight into their marketing. And as you can see as well, the other claims they got are over 80%. So they did really, really well on this study. Kind of legislation side, because I keep talking about having legislation and making sure that you can use your claims. So obviously every country has its own advertising regulations that surround claims, as well as cosmetic regulations. So I've taken out a statement from the ASA, which is the Advertising Standards Authority in the UK, to give you an idea of what kind of legislation is there. Now, this is a new part that I found the other day, which is for consumer studies, and it's basically to do with the representation of your data in your responses. And I thought this study was a great example of this. Basically, if you were to say 89% of people agree that this reduces frizz and flyaways, it suggests that when you say, of people, that it's everyone. And we know in this study it is. We've reflected all those different hair types. However, if you were just to test the product on Caucasian hair, it gives the impression it would also be available for everyone and have the same effect. But we have no data to say that. So what we really want to do is either state the particular hair type, because not every product is suitable for every hair type, that's fine, but you must be clear in your marketing. And it would say, for example, 89% of people with fine hair, fine straight hair maybe, agreed with the claim. And then it makes it very clear for those with kind of thicker or curlier hair types that it's not really suitable for them, or it may not be suitable for them. It's not representing them. But generally, if you're looking for those claims, and a lot of people are now looking for diversity in their panel, let us know and we can make sure we get that for you so you can use those claims and keep them really broad. So Maycon, I've got this video for the new technology, so I'm just going to share that as well on my screen. So Maycon sent over this video for a new aerosol technology, just to kind of give you an example of the innovation that's happening. Okay, and I'll go back to the presentation now. But Maycon, please feel free to talk a little bit about.
Okay, thank you for this. Just to objective this slide, just to share about the evolution of the aerosol technology. Today you have a lot of options, the packaging, new propellant tendency, the actuator. This is technology might recommend that you need to connect every time with the supply, the manufacturer, the packaging, because every day you have the opportunity to see new solution, example for VOC, volatilization organic gas, or about the benefits about the application. In this case, it's amazing. Before slide, I showed for the same cap changed the application. Now you just change the form, the position, the pack you change the spray format application. And another point here, just to tell for people, here the Colgate was launching this antiperspirant con CBD, decrease the irritation. Sometimes people have this irritation when you use their care. Normally, people doesn't apply correctly the aerosol in the skin, because if you put the aerosol very close to your skin, certainly you have a burn your skin. But normally, people had bad interaction with propellant. This propellant has this irritation in the skin. This is an interesting technology when you put the cannabidiol for decrease this irritation in the skin. Just an illustration today because you have a lot of option and technology.
Yeah, it's really good to see. Like
Okay.
I said, it's one of those like really interesting packagings. There's just innovation all the time. And I think it's been really interesting to touch on all of that today. It's really exciting for everyone who's watching and thinking about making some aerosols. So I'm going to move on to questions now. I know we've had a few come in. And thank you very much again for your understanding with the technical hiccups. It was very smooth from then, I think, which is great.
Sorry.
So oh, let's go through the questions. So I just want to, there's one here for you, I think, Maycon, to say about which kind of products are used for which nozzle, which I think we focused on. And if there's a regulation that will come throughout Latin America. Now, I think this is to do with the Anvisa regulation.
Yes, this is a discussion. Um, Honestly, in this moment, I do not have a special legislation for Latin American. I know each country have internally your legislation. Okay, I think most important you have a connection your regulatory part for understanding. But Latin America doesn't have common, of course, about the particle size, yes, and the kids correctly. You need to mandatory to conduct this measure and check the particle size, special for kids.
Yeah, so at the moment it's definitely going to, it's very Brazil focused, and for every other country in Latin America, look at the country specific legislation. So yeah, so I think, I don't know if there's any examples for this. I know they said about seeing what kind of products would be used for each nozzle. I think we kind of touched on that a bit. So it might be something that actually you could reach out to separately, because I'll be sending Maycon's contact information. So if there's a particular product you have in mind, that's probably easier for Maycon then to suggest what kind of nozzle would actually be appropriate. So let's have a little look at other questions that have come in. So again, I think this will be for you, Maycon. It says, could you comment on the finding of benzene on a lot of the aerosol sunscreens in the US market? I have heard of this, yes. What could be the source, and could it be the propellants? So that's quite interesting. Do you think that any of the benzene sort of findings that have been in sunscreen are from the propellants, or are they actually from the formulation? I guess it's kind of speculation.
This is interesting. Depends the technology, depends when you to select your propellant, it's most important to look at all the information behind this propellant. Example, the legislation, the support, the sorry, about the supplier, about the VOC. Today you have a lot of recommendation, the worldwide recommendation about the ozonium, but I think this point, example, if you compare the BP versus dimethyl ether, dimethyl ether is more friendly when you have an emulsion your product, but when you compare the costing 3 or 5 times expensive versus botanic propane. Uh, about when you talk about inflammability, the propellant, uh, it's difficult to answer this question. It's an amazing question, but you need to check a lot of information behind it. Uh, Sometimes the people just follow the competitor. I'm very uncomfortable when the market people tell me, "Oh, look at this product, have it this ingredient. I need the same." No, just give me the objective, just give me the challenge. I will researching, I will checking. This is one example about the Actuator. Doesn't have it here in Latin America the production. You need to importation.
Mm.
And this is topic very interesting when you talk about propellant. You have an example this the max new propellant or so replacement the HFC is a prohibitive in a lot of products. You have this option the replacement the HFO. It's but you need to check. You need to learn your product. Just no follow the benchmark. Or just believe in another company's using.
It's quite
Okay, I don't
interesting.
know. It's difficult to answer because behind they have a lot of topics. It's
Yeah, and it's
correctly or no?
yeah, I was going to say it's a hot topic. I mean, I've been reading a lot about the benzene issue, and actually, I think it's something that might be a little bit of fear mongering going on. When you look into it, I don't think it's actually quite the issue it's being made out to be. But I don't want to comment too much either side because I have not seen all of the research. But yeah, I think it's an interesting one to keep an eye on. I just wanted to say, Maycon, it's really interesting. You just mentioned HFO as a propellant technology because someone has asked, do you have any thoughts on that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Interesting to use it, this technology, but every time I tell the people, you need to go to Workbench and to check the interaction about your product and the propellant. It's a key point.
Yeah.
Uh, you have a lot of options the new propellant, but you need to check. You need to investigation if this propellant help you or bring your finally claim your finally benefits. I suggest the people had in the lab all the options the propellant
Mm.
for the check this interaction. Of course, you need to talk with the security area. You need to have a special place for check, of course. But every time people R&D people talk to me and tell this is a how material for you. It's the same sunscreen, the same the water, the vitamin. It's your how material. You need to understand exactly this how material you influencing your final product.
Mm.
Talk your supply packaging. Look at this. Are you will working with this special propellant? Your packaging had interaction or no this propellant?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that, and another question as well that's come up, which is quite interesting because it's sort of saying, does the type of propellant matter? But I guess what I'm probably going to rephrase it and say, are there less regulations about the type of propellant if it's applied to, if it's not applied to the body, and if it's an air freshener or something like that? Are there different regulations in terms of what you can kind of use as a propellant?
Siri, again, your question. So your cut.
Sorry, it's because I reworded it very weirdly. So they've
Mhm.
asked basically, does the propellant matter if it's something like an air freshener, which isn't applied to the body? But I guess it's
Yeah.
more to do with is the regulation different?
No, doesn't have no.
No.
Just it's a base. No. Yeah. This is interesting because this performance depend the actuator too. Depend this nosing too. Depends the concentration the propellant you're using. This you need to check this balance internally your product. You
Mm,
know what I mean?
yeah.
Okay.
There's two more questions from Raphael for you, Macon, that I just want to touch on before we finish up. So the first one is about how do you see the potential for nitrogen-based aerosols, low VOC, for Latin America? Any launch?
I think it's example. You have a potassium. of course, but you need to check what exactly this propellant you bring for your final product. Okay, it lows VOC, it's amazing, interesting, but in the end, you will have the finally benefits. Of course, you need to adapt your formula for this new propellant. Of course, I think is if you be compared with a traditional propellants, butane, propane, is expensive. No big expense, but you need to check. I think you have this a big potential because it's this discussion, the low VOC, it's a globally discussion. The biggest company follow this in tendency. It's most important to work in this, but depends the business, depends the importation. I think you have a big potential to bring or to evaluation this technology in not only in South America or Latin America, but in a globally too.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with that to say, I think, as we kind of mentioned at the beginning, it's one of the areas of the industry where we're seeing huge innovation. So I think there's just huge potential worldwide. And like with any kind of thing like this, I think if one country starts taking things on, you'll see it spread across the globe anyway. But it's exciting. As I said, for me, I don't know a lot about packaging design. I know how to evaluate it with the consumer, but I don't ever make it. So it's been so interesting to learn a bit more about those considerations you need to make. I know there's a couple more questions, but I'm aware it's past the hour and people might need to get on. So I'm going to send out our contact information, the email addresses for both me and Maycon. So if you want to pass on your question after the webinar, please do feel free to reach out. But just to wrap,
Carol,
oh, sorry.
one point
Yeah.
about the pack plastic. Sorry, I need to answer
No,
just about the pack. But I need you. I had the opportunity to work with this packaging, or we have a Rafael question here. Any launching or trend for PET plastic bottle aerosol in Latam? What's happened behind this technology? It needs to attention in high temperature. Every time, every test was working with this special bottle, I had bad results. Okay, this point behind it's amazing packaging, had the opportunity, but if you put superior 5 bars or 6 bar and they put your packaging high temperature, you had the packaging changed for a ball. No exploding, but it changed a ball. Okay, just at this point, I think interesting for people.
be careful.
Uh, yeah, careful.
Oh, thanks, Maycon. So just to wrap up, I've got a couple of webinars coming up in July. I'm not going to have any more webinars for the rest of June. But yeah, in July, I've got launching a brand internationally, and that's going to be the beginning of a 2-part webinar with Buzz Beauty. So they've got huge experience working with some amazing global cosmetic brands, looking at their global development. So we'll be looking at those considerations. Then I'll be joined by Frisia from Connect for Compliance, who will be talking about treated articles. So this is any kind of antibacterial material like towels, and looking at what the regulations are behind that as well. Just a note for the SCS, please do look at that distance learning course in the essentials of cosmetic science if you're interested in developing your knowledge there. And also we're sponsoring the IFSCC Congress in September 2022, and you can register your interest for that as well. There's both of our contact information, but as I mentioned, I'll be emailing it over very shortly with the recording. Thank you so much, everyone, for all of your input today. There's some fantastic questions there. And yeah, feel free to reach out if you have any more. Thank you so much, Maycon, for joining me again.
My pleasure again.
Your experience.
And I'm so sorry, people, for my connection today.
It's fun. I think what I said, I'll edit down the recording and everyone can see a much smoother thing. It's my connection as well, so please don't feel too bad. It's one of those days. We're having thunderstorms in the UK, so it's great fun. But thank you again. Thank you so much. And I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of their day, and we'll see you soon.
Okay, stay in house. Bye bye.